Hello everybody, I am Tiffany and today I'm bringing you another book and movie review combined. Pew pew pew! Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm super excited to get into this. This is a continuation of a book series and a movie franchise because they did the same number of movies as they did books. The review on the first book and movie is already up on my channel. I'll go ahead and leave a link in the description below. Now I'm excited just to complete another book, knock one out, watch another movie, and really compare and contrast. The book, of course, I'm talking about today is The Scorch Trials. Dun dun dun. This is the second book in the Maze Runner series, also the second movie, of course. I will admit I was not as excited going into this book. If you've watched my last review, I wasn't completely in love with the Maze Runner, the book, and the movie was still good, but after rewatching it, there were a lot of things different, and it made me have a different opinion of it. And this book, because of the fact that I wasn't head over heels in love with the first book, I was very hesitant to read. I will say though, I think I'm in the unpopular side of this, but I actually do like the second book better than the first book, believe it or not. I think the character development in this one is way better than it was in the first book. Movie-wise though, that's a different story. The first movie was way better than the second movie. But I will say, at least for the book portion, it was still really hard for me to get through. And I think it's just because of the fact that I'm not as intrigued by them, which is sad because I was really hoping I would be intrigued by them. But I just wasn't. I had mentioned in my last review that I had seen both Maze Runner and the Scorch Trial movies before I actually read the books. And when watching the second movie, I think I still enjoyed it more because of the fact that I didn't know the story. But after reading the book, oh my gosh. I wasn't even thinking it was as good as the first movie when it came out, but I was just shocked how different they made things. And this is one of those cases where when you try to make things different from the story that's right here, it doesn't work. Still props to the actors though, don't get me wrong. The actors still did a great job. It seems like there's a lot of effort put in this movie, but it just felt like they were trying to make it completely their own story. And when you're basing it off a big book series, why in the world would you change it? I get there's stuff you gotta leave out, but geez, there's sometimes that the adaptations just change the story so much, it's ridiculous. And it's not even the same story, and this is one of those instances for me in all honesty. For those of you who want statistics, the book got a 3.92 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I disagreed with that in all honesty, which is why I say I feel like I'm in the unpopular section of this. But I really liked this book. I felt the characters were more grounded. And like I said, it still didn't completely captivate me, but I was interested in what was happening more because I actually cared about the characters. The movie got a 6.3 out of 10 on IMDb versus the first movie, which got a 6.9 out of 10 on IMDb. And that's pretty accurate to me. I will say I think you will enjoy the movie more if you have not read the books, because I enjoyed it the first time around, and that was because I didn't know the story. But after reading the story and feeling like this story was a lot better than what the movie gave me, it was a completely different perspective on it. I am excited to read the third book and watch the third movie because I actually haven't done either. So I know nothing of what happens in the third book. Don't spoil me, please. I will get to the third book. I am a completionist. I do finish my series. Thank you very much. I do. Now, this is a second book in a series and a second movie in a franchise, so there isn't a ton I can tell you without spoiling you for the previous book and movie. But I will say, for those of you who are just tuning into this one, Maze Runner follows a character named Thomas, who ends up waking up randomly, doesn't remember anything about himself except for his name, and he wakes up in a place called the Glade, and he has to try and solve this giant maze with a bunch of other boys who ended up just like him. This giant maze, they're not really sure what it's for, but they know they have to solve it in order to get out of their predicament. I don't want to say much more. I think you really should just jump into it if you continue this series. Overall, I like this book better. Mainly just the character development is way better to me. Maybe give it a shot. This book surprised me a bit more than what I thought it was going to do. That is really all I have for the non-spoilery section, so go and read this book, go and read the first book too, go watch the movies too, get your own opinions about them, and then come back here and you can tell me what you think and we can discuss in all the feels together. Okay, goodbye non-spoilery people, I'll see you soon. Goodbye! Spoilery. time. This was such an interesting experience for me. I've had situations where I've watched the movie before I read the book, but I loved the books and I loved the movies just as equally. And the Maze Runner series overall has just been such a weird experience. I read the first book really liking the first movie and thinking I was really going to enjoy the first book, and I didn't really. This is a situation where the second book kind of surprised me. It was better than I thought it was going to be. Thomas got so much less annoying in this book, which made this book a lot more bearable. Maybe that's why. It was the fact that Thomas wasn't so annoying that I couldn't read. But when I had originally watched the movie before I read this book, I enjoyed it, and when I rewatched the movie, I just sat there thinking, what the heck is this? I was actually really disappointed rewatching the movie a second time. And when I was reading it, I think what surprised me and made me more eager to read it was the stories were so different. I was reading it and I realized this was nothing like the movie I remembered, but the story was so different and there was nothing in the movie that really resembled it, that it was new to me. But still, I've also read Me Before You beforehand, and I knew everything that was going to happen in it, but I still enjoyed it way better. But the first two books have just been a weird experience overall for me. The thing that made it the most bearable was definitely Thomas getting 100% better. I was intrigued in the book right off the bat when Teresa was taken away from them. In the movie, as you know, if you've watched it, Teresa leaves them in a sense, but not really. In the book, it's a whole new simulation. You have these people who are called the Scorched. They are diseased, and this is an actual disease that they're trying to cure, and you're slowly figuring out why in the world these kids are being tested like this. But the biggest thing is that Teresa gets taken. And her whole arc in this book made me like her a whole lot less, and that's definitely hard because I didn't really like her in the first book, but it was interesting. You didn't know if she was really trying to help them out or if it was all fake. And I felt Thomas's pain throughout that. That moment where she's talking about how she was forced to kiss him earlier in the book, I felt his pain on that. He really thought she was fighting against it in order to give him that kiss, but she was saying the opposite. And then you get why he has all this mistrust at the end when she's saying, I did it in order to keep you alive or else they would have killed you. And Thomas is thinking he can't really trust her anymore. He's too hurt by what she did and what she said. And it was annoying still because I just don't like Teresa, but it made you understand Thomas more. In the movie though, it just got weird right off the bat. They put them in this room and they create this whole thing where there's other gladers. And there are other gladers. In the book, there's a girl group that had one guy, Aris, who has the same mind powers that Teresa and Thomas have. And this one, they make it seem like there were all of these other kids that were being simulated, and it just ruined it right off the bat because it's only supposed to be that there's two groups, and there's no indication whatsoever that this is any type of test. They just threw that out the window. Teresa gets separated and gets tested, and her big betrayal in the movie is that she starts to remember why in the world she was helping Wicked out, and because of that she can't betray them and ends up ratting out where they are and where the rebel group is that's fighting against Wicked in the movie. And it just wasn't nearly as impactful. I will admit I did like the backstory of her sister. She gouged her own eyes out. That I think was great backstory for Teresa and getting where she's coming from, but I just didn't like what they did with it. The fun thing about Scorch Trials, even though it's crazy and I get why people like the order of Maze Runner better than this, is that it is so wide open. The world is a desert. They're crossing the desert. All of it is still a test, and that's what makes it crazy because you think they're on their own, but then Wicked comes in, they save Thomas when he gets hit by a bullet. In the movie, they just completely threw that out the window. They made it an apocalyptic movie, which they did not need to do. It does have to do with an apocalypse in some nature. There is a disease, they are trying to cure it, but all of it's a simulation. The movie, they just make it that they become a part of the apocalypse, but they're still trying to stop Wicked from testing, and that made it 10 times less fun. They had an opening scene in this book that was super creepy with the metal ball thing. I don't even know what that was. They're walking in the darkness, they're trying to get out, and all of a sudden you hear this person just scream. They're getting attacked and you don't know by what. Thomas feels for the guy's head and all there's like a massive ball there, like a stone metal ball, and it's just what I don't like the thought of that. I don't like transformations. I don't like thinking that someone's head turned into that. And then Winston gets attacked by it and you're thinking, what the heck is this? And it set the tone for the rest of the book. You realize it's not going to be a simple thing. It's going to be crazy. It doesn't make sense to me still why they had to do all of this in order to find a cure. So that's what I'm waiting to figure out. And if they don't give me a good enough explanation in the third book, I'm gonna be very disappointed. I better get my answer. You have a moment with the lightning. That lightning was terrifying. It was just striking down people. Ow, I hit my elbow. It was just striking down at people. It was killing people, and they were just running, and there was nowhere to hide. They do that in the movie, but it's just random. It's just part of the world. It's part of the apocalyptic nature. No. In the book, it's more exciting. Why? Because of the fact that it is a test. Some people are supposed to make it, some people are not. Everything happens for a reason. And that's why the lightning is so scary, because you don't know who in the world they're going to hit. You get introduced to two new characters in the book and movie. Their names are Jorge and Brenda. Brenda, I'm curious about. I will say this book is not good at being subtle. When something's off about someone, they don't hide it very well. They don't brush it off very well. For example, there's a moment where she says something about the gladers in the book. I think she calls them gladers or something along those lines. And Thomas kind of notices that he never really said that in front of her before, that name, or he doesn't remember. Then he kind of brushes it off. But they made it so blatantly obvious that this wasn't right. And they didn't really bring anything else up again. But you know that something's up. The person who played her in the movie was really fun. Of course, her character ends up getting bit by one of the Scorch, and it just again ruins the whole premise. It just made it so apocalyptic, it was so annoying. Even in the book, what makes it mysterious too is they tell the Gladers this disease, the flare, is rooted in every single one of them. And that they're trying to get to the end of this in order to find a cure. It's rooted in Brenda, it's rooted in Jorge. That's what makes it dangerous too, traveling with them, because you don't know at what stage people are at. You don't know if they're downright crazy. You don't know if they're mid-sane. You don't know. It's crazy. That's part of the danger of it, and they just get rid of that in the movie. Oh, this movie frustrated me so much. And they killed Winston in the movie. They have him get attacked, and then the infection is spreading, and he dies, and I got upset. Winston goes through trauma in this book, but I believe he survives if I remember correctly. If I'm wrong, correct me. I'm sorry. It's been a little bit since I read this. But still, they killed him, and I was just sitting there being like, what the heck? What is this? I don't understand this. That part in the book where Brenda and Thomas have to travel underground and they run into all those crazies, that was insane. That was heart-pounding. I didn't know what was gonna happen. Thomas had to kill. That was a big moment for Thomas. He had to kill a person. That's important character development that they got rid of. I will say I don't blame them though necessarily for cutting out the whole thing with Teresa and Aris. It was just weird. They made Aris's character far less important in the movie. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but the whole thing with tricking Thomas, and it was just, that part was just weird. It felt like it was going too much back and forth. One moment Teresa's saying, trust me, but then it doesn't seem like you should trust her. But then all of a sudden she's saying, oh, I did this so I could save you so they didn't kill you. Maybe it's just because of the fact that I don't like Teresa. That's probably what it is. And Aris wasn't a giant person that I loved really either. I don't like going back and forth like that. It makes me feel like the book doesn't know what it wants to do. I get it's trying to confuse you, but no. Minho in this book was great though. The way he fought back with people was hilarious. When they get captured by Jorge, he just keeps running his mouth even though he shouldn't and almost gets himself killed, but he was just entertaining. Minho's my favorite in the books. And the movies too. Minho's just fun. Him and Newt are great in the movies. I love them both. They're my fave. And I do like that they make Newt bigger in the movies. I do like that character a lot. And then we have the one character that redeemed themselves some to me, which is Thomas. He was 10 times more bearable in this book. His emotions weren't everywhere. He had to think logically. His relationship with Brenda was kind of weird, but he was a lot easier to follow. He just felt way more grounded. So when you're finding out more about his backstory, it becomes more intriguing. And Dylan O'Brien does such a great job with Thomas in the movies. He's so likable and fun and relatable. I just am always rooting for him in the movies. Dylan O'Brien really brought Thomas to life for me, and I liked his interpretation of him. I did like the introduction of the girl group. I am interested how that will develop. I like Harriet a lot. They did have them in the movies. They were a lot of fun. That whole rebel group in the movie was great. I liked that aspect. I just don't like the fact that they were part of the whole apocalypse thing. But those characters were great. It was really, really cool learning that there was a girl group and one guy and vice versa. That was really fun in this book. That is really all I have to say about this book and movie. Go read and watch them for yourself. If you stayed through the spoilers, well, you got spoiled, but go and watch it anyway and form your own opinion, because one person's opinion shouldn't keep you from watching something. Someone made that, they put time and effort into it. It's always good to support that stuff. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you have any other book or movie recommendations, please leave them in the comments below and I will take note of them and make sure to go and get them and do reviews on them for you guys. If you want any updates on anything, go to my blog. I'll flash a link of it right here. It's beautiful. There's a link to it in the description below as well. If for some reason I know there's not going to be a video up for any particular reason, it'll let you know too. And it keeps you updated on acting stuff in general, because I am an actress and it's fun to update that stuff. Thank you so much. Have an awesome day, evening, afternoon, whatever time of the day you're watching this, and don't forget to be awesome. All right. Goodbye.